Heard of your father's Oldsmobile? He is your Oldsmobile's father. Ransom Eli Olds. The car line Olds began more than a century ago is about to go the way of the Hudson and the Rambler.
Most remember Oldsmobile as cynically rebadged GM product variants. It may come as a surprise, however, that Oldsmobile actually played a major role in America's transition from horse to automobile. Founded all the way back in 1897 by Ransom E. Olds, the company would deliver the first mass-produced car, the Model R Curved Dash. GM acquired Oldsmobile in 1908 and briefly allowed the brand to retain its luxury status. The Oldsmobile Limited retailed for the equivalent of $150,000. Of course, it wasn't long before General Motors delivered the first blow to Oldsmobile's prestige by moving it down market. GM's Halo division Cadillac was not to be trifled with by corporate siblings. By the 20s, Oldsmobile would maintain its understated luxury image, despite now sharing its platform with Buick. As with the rest of the automotive industry, Oldsmobile ceased production of cars in early 1942 and turned to producing large caliber guns and ammunition to assist in the Second World War. By the 1950s, Oldsmobile reflected mid-century glamour and optimism with its rocket-themed styling and marketing, and the luxury theme also continued with available power windows, 2-speed electric windshield wipers, and even an automatic headlamp dimmer. Of course, the mid-century vision of the future could never have imagined the advancements in technology that would occur by the 1980s. Despite all of this change, Oldsmobile's flagship touring coupe, the Toronado, would go on to represent the essence of Oldsmobile. Toronado debuted for model year 1966, and it was viewed by the public as more than a little eccentric. At the time, front-wheel drive was quite the novelty, particularly in a large American automobile. Dubbed the unitized power package, Oldsmobile had managed to combine its rocket V8 with a special transmission that fit neatly into a conventionally sized engine bay. By the 60s, Oldsmobile was seen as past its prime and stodgy, so word of the division developing such a novel powertrain concept was certainly seen with a bit of skepticism. There was, however, a method to Oldsmobile's madness. The front-wheel drive layout offered a flat floor and greatly increased overall interior space. The lack of a conventional rear driveshaft also allowed for enhanced rear seat positioning and luggage capacity. Whether it would prove a success or not, one thing was for sure: Toronado was the talk of the automotive press and public. Attention the aging brand so desperately sought. GM wasn't entirely sure of the unusual powertrain and body configuration, but doubts were overcome after 1.5 million test miles of reliable performance. And after 7 years of development, Oldsmobile was given the green light by GM to return to the limelight once again with its proudest accomplishment, Toronado. Set aside the revolutionary powertrain for a moment and consider Tornado's styling. It is difficult for modern eyes to understand the impact Tornado's styling had at its introduction in late 1965. Though some saw Toronado as eccentric and others viewed it as just weird, just about everyone agreed the essence of Oldsmobile was back. From the hidden headlamps to the glorious fender blades, Oldsmobile's early reputation of innovation had returned, both under the hood and with its daring styling. Tornado's profile, initially penned by Oldsmobile stylist David North in 1962, was truly unlike anything else on the road. Oldsmobile literature was quick to point out the traction advantages of front-wheel drive, as well as the markedly increased interior room. Most impressive was the lack of compromise. Toronado premiered with a 7-liter V8 that produced 385 horsepower, enough to propel the 4,500-pound car with both grace and pace. Tornado's suspension was also revolutionary, as it was the first North American GM product to feature torsion bars for the front suspension. More conventional leaf springs suspended the rear beam axle. The torsion bars and rear beam axle also contributed to more space for people and luggage. The combination of forward traction and other Oldsmobile innovations provided Toronado with shockingly impressive performance numbers. Despite its 4,500-pound curb weight, Toronado was capable of achieving 60 miles per hour in only 7.5 seconds. For the time, this kind of acceleration was considered quite exotic, particularly for a front-wheel drive automatic powertrain. Interiors reflected this rocket-like performance with space-age styling, particularly in the instrument panel detailing. Though Toronado may have initially been perceived as an eccentric pet project of a past its prime automaker, Toronado would prove everyone wrong and win back the respect the pioneering brand so truly deserved. The coveted award of Motor Trend Car of the Year was definitive proof Oldsmobile was back. Though the origin of the branding of Toronado is a bit murky, early literature would seem to connect it to the astrological sign of the bull, though even this is a bit of a stretch given the spelling. Though its namesake origins were uncertain, one thing that was clear from its earliest days is that Toronado would undergo constant transformation. In only its second year, the 67 Tornado's front and rear styling were altered, the front end losing the signature vents above the bumper, and the rear end gaining more complicated styling details. The drivetrain was further refined, yet still featured a modified version of GM's turbohydromatic transmission. Somewhat unusual for the time, Oldsmobile did make attempts to market Toronado to female prospects, comparing it to a mink as the most exciting animal around. This would prove to be a theme throughout Tornado's history, where Oldsmobile would invoke widely diverse images of exotic locations, people, and even outer space. Despite its success, as the 70s neared, Toronado would receive styling alterations that gradually eroded the cutting-edge look Toronado launched with. Though the profile was familiar, the forward fender blades were axed, and the rear end was much more conventional, likely a cost-cutting move. The signature headlamps did remain, however, for now. Despite the efforts to make Toronado more mainstream, brochure images continued to evoke exotic locations and a sense of adventure. By 1969, available horsepower had increased to 400 with the available W34 option and 455 cubic inch V8 to replace the prior V8 in 1968. Interior detailing was revised, and most customers did prefer the straddle bench seat, which provided living room levels of comfort paired with the flat floor. The 1970 was the final year for the first generation of Toronado. As with many aspects of the 70s, looking back, it is a bit puzzling as to understand exactly what was going on. The fender blades were back, but gone were the hidden headlamps, resulting in a front end that was awkward at best. Even the wheel ornamentation was unharmonious with the rest of the styling, featuring flat surfaces that extended well away from the wheels. Interior surfaces consisted mostly of black vinyl and lost some of the rocket-themed touches of prior years. And then there was 1971, the debut of the second-generation Toronado. The major styling overhaul did away with the grand touring style of the original to adopt a more traditional luxury aesthetic. Though many would lament the loss of Tornado's original distinctive lines, sales did increase dramatically. Though it no longer appeared to be from outer space, Toronado did now sport standard front disc brakes and an improved ride thanks to rear coil springs in place of the previous leaf spring setup. Perhaps the most interesting aspect of this new Toronado was the dual high-mount stop lamps located above the rear deck lid, a feature that would eventually become government mandated. Interior comfort benefited from a wheelbase that was extended by 3 inches. The 70s were certainly a unique time of innovation both for cars and culture. Fortunately for Toronado, useful innovations such as audible brake wear indicators and the ability to run on unleaded gas would arrive for 1972. But as with the rest of the US automotive offerings of the time, Toronado would be humiliated with massively reduced horsepower rating of 250 thanks to new, more realistic EPA regulations. Fortunately for Toronado, evolving culture cared less about raw horsepower and more about quirky glitz and glam, all of which was a Toronado strength from day one. Styling was revised yet again for 1973, due largely in part to the new federally mandated bumpers. Though ungainly, they were somewhat better integrated than rival offerings. The Brougham interior was a nice upgrade over the standard offering, particularly in this fascinating shade of hooker lipstick red. It was no doubt hoped that the luxury appointments would distract from the fact that Tornado's EPA mileage rating was 11 miles per gallon with a stiff tailwind. As the mid-70s approached, styling would continue to be revised, primarily in front and rear detailing. Interiors would continue to also evolve with more luxurious textures and materials that helped distract from the ever-decreasing horsepower ratings. The new federally approved rectangular headlamps would appear for 1975, somehow providing the front end with a mildly distressed countenance. The high-mount stop lamps were retained, and seating surfaces were more marshmallow-esque than ever. Changes for 1976 continued to be in the form of minor exterior trim arrangements. Though air conditioning continued to be surprisingly optional, there were many standard features such as variable ratio power steering, automatic transmission, and an electric clock. Styling details would turn a bit more funky during Tornado's disco era with the available XS trim. The XS featured a unique wraparound rear window that was bent using heat. An XSR variant with power retracting T-top panels was scrapped when it was discovered there was no way to prevent water from entering the cabin. Interiors featured even more button-tufted goodness, all the better to appeal to the grooviest among us. The Brougham trim continued for 1977 and continued the tradition of providing a touch more disco-style luxury. An all-new Toronado would debut for 1979, and though 1,000 pounds lighter and 16 inches shorter, it would prove to be a return to form for Oldsmobile. Styling was crisp and purposeful, and though on paper it was down on power compared to the previous generation, acceleration was quite respectable for the time, with a 0 to 60 time of 9.4 seconds. Handling dynamics were improved with the Cadillac-developed rear-independent suspension that delivered better ride and handling dynamics. Interiors continued to offer both comfort and space that rivaled prior generations thanks to clever packaging of mechanical components. There was even a nod to sportiness with the XSC Sport Coupe package that featured sporty bucket seats and unique exterior paint treatment. Both the press and the public agreed. Once again, Toronado and Oldsmobile had gained relevance in a very different place and time from which it was born. A diverse array of interior options was on offer, including 2 steering wheels and bucket or bench seating surfaces. Engine choices included the popular 5-liter V8, which produced 140 horsepower, the less popular 4.13-liter that was more affordable but underperforming, and last but certainly least, the dreaded 5.7-liter diesel. Regardless of the power or lack thereof under the hood, interior and exterior styling of the 3rd generation of Toronado was viewed as a home run hit for Oldsmobile. Economy and performance was marginally improved by the mid-80s with the introduction of the 4-speed variant of the Hydromatic transmission. Indeed, things were looking up for GM's mid-tier brand Oldsmobile. Sales were up and prestige was now rivaling corporate cousins Buick and Cadillac. Surely the corporate overlords of GM would realize the true value of the Oldsmobile brand. Oldsmobile no doubt sensed major change was on the way, with ever-increasing pressure to downsize and economize. Despite this, Toronado would hold its head up high and focus on providing true, affordable luxury. Interiors continued to provide exceptional comfort, despite some obvious cost-cutting. A legacy of elegant nonconformity continued with the 1984 Toronado Caliente Coupe, featuring stainless steel crown molding. Rear disc brakes were now optional, as was a state-of-the-art digital instrument cluster, the latter of which is a feature I dreamt about as a kid. Unfortunately, our Toyota Tercel wagon had no such feature.
Who am I to disagree? I travel the world and the 7 seas. Everybody's looking for something.
Undoubtedly, Toronado's most drastic of transformations would arrive for 1986. So unsure was GM and Oldsmobile of its acceptance, early images were shrouded in darkness, revealing only the silhouette. The hidden headlamps did return for the first time since 1969, though this was likely to serve as a distraction from the fact that overall length had been reduced by 17 inches. Even more worrisome was the fact that Toronado's asking price increased by 16% over the previous generation. This price increase was largely contributed to Oldsmobile's investment into technology, which was put on full display in Toronado's cutting-edge instrument panel. To counterbalance Toronado's new cutting-edge styling, wheel treatments and other details would attempt to evoke more traditional Oldsmobile themes. Unfortunately for Toronado and its GM siblings, the gas crisis ended unexpectedly, and the buying public resented these drastically downsized offerings. The result of which was a drastic downturn in sales, which is a shame as the stylist had genuinely managed to differentiate Toronado from its corporate siblings. 20 years is a long time in the automotive industry, and growing pains or not, Toronado was a true survivor. And though disregarded by many, the fourth generation of Oldsmobile's flagship coupe could once again grab the attention of those who appreciated its eccentric, forward-thinking approach of automotive revolution. Though viewed by the masses as out of touch and irrelevant, there is no denying that Toronado deserved respect and recognition for the service and entertainment it provided during its many years of faithful service. The Trofeo trim level would appear in 1987 to help bolster lagging sales. Leather seating was standard, as was a simulated dual exhaust and stiffer suspension, which was marketed as the FE3 package. The standard Toronado would receive minor color and trim revisions. Interior trim options continued to offer a variety of plush variations. New seats and a monochromatic appearance for Trofeo arrived for 1988, as did the introduction of a Buick-sourced 3.8-liter V6. This new sequential port fuel-injected power plant, combined with a renewed focus on craftsmanship, did somewhat elevate Tornado's image. As did the elimination of wire wheel covers. Premium alloy wheels were now standard. But perhaps most impressive of all was the color CRT touchscreen, dubbed the Visual Information Center, which controlled the optional integrated cell phone, climate control, and even offered primitive navigation function in the form of a compass with a clock. Oddly, the '89 Trofeo wasn't marketed as a Toronado, perhaps a desperate marketing attempt to distinguish it from the sales failure that was the fourth-generation Toronado. Indeed, GM had gone too far in its downsizing efforts, and the venerable Toronado was one of the unfortunate casualties. But the show must go on, and Toronado would once again evolve to survive. Toronado for 1990 arrived with changes that once again made the press and public take notice. Gone were the fussy legacy detailing. Excessive chrome and lace spoke wheel designs were replaced with truly sleek avant-garde styling. Sadly, the interior did lose the basket handle shifter and some of the digital instrumentation, but the digital touchscreen remained as an available option. The big news, however, was the addition of nearly 12 inches in overall length, the majority of which was a pointed aft of the rear wheels. This change greatly improved overall proportions, and finally provided Toronado with a look that once again found favor with personal luxury car prospects. The front end also benefited from a refined aesthetic that paid homage to prior Toronado themes. And though the overall look was familiar, so extensive was Oldsmobile's efforts to improve Tornado's fortunes that in the end, only the hood was carryover from 1989. A driver's side airbag, remote keyless entry, and analog brakes were also made standard for the 1990 model year. Nearing the final year of its fourth generation, Oldsmobile would continue to further refine Toronado with the styling, performance, and detailing it should have received at introduction. Even the beloved brand Oldsmobile was not immune to the GM family curse. Refine it until it's right, and then make it disappear. From the glitzy and glamorous 80s to the mildly incomprehensible 70s, every generation of Toronado is a reflection of us. And though it's easy to look back upon our history and mock the silly clothes, awkward dance moves, and questionable upholstery choices, one must keep in mind, this is who we were. And these cars also represent the passion of the people behind them, from the factory workers to the marketing magicians that somehow combined many wildly diverse themes into compelling reasons to buy a car. It is these people and their passion that were the true soul of the beloved Oldsmobile brand. In the end, it may not have been easy for GM to say goodbye, but say goodbye it did, leaving the storied Oldsmobile brand with nothing.
To tell